Please join me in welcoming Michael Wolff and Dick Polman of WHYY News to the Free Library of Philadelphia.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Wow, I don't know why you're here, but I also, before we start, I want to thank the Free Library for having this event. This is the first event on Michael's book tour. Let's hear it for Philadelphia. We're going to talk for about 35 minutes or so, and then I have questions on cards right here. So we'll pitch some of those at Michael from the audience, from you all. We have, I understand, 2 overflow rooms, and this is being live streamed as well to everybody and all the ships at sea, as Walter Winchell would have said. One quick announcement I want to make. A little bit of news happened today. President Trump is considered fantastically, excellently fit, physically and mentally. And even though he's often been listed at 6'2", apparently today he's listed as 6'3". So I do want to say to Michael that, contrary to his book, he has grown in office. But you know, let's talk about that very thing.
Well, it's very important. I mean, his height is a fluctuating height because it relates to his body mass index. And that if he is a little taller, he can avoid being called obese, which is a significant goal in Donald Trump's life, and a very tricky goal.
Well, one of the things, let's just start with a broad question that I have is, like, here's the thing. I mean, we've known, most of us have known, since day one, by dint of his own statements and actions, and from what's happened in the White House since, and from what people have been leaking to the press for many, many, many months, including a New York Times story in November that I believe had 60 sources talking about how he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and you know, in terms of policy, he's just, you know, he's fairly clueless, and that his temperament is wild and all over the place. This is all stuff, of course, as you know, that's in Fire and Fury. So, and I know we were talking about this just now. You know, given all that and all that information, basically that's been out there, why has this book is now in 11 printings already? Why has this book caught on the way it has? Given the fact, I think the basic knowledge base that people have was in some ways already there.
This is a very good question, and I'm not sure I know the answer. I think that the answer is probably because this is a pretty good story. I think that I've told it in a pretty compelling way. I think it has the luxury, or I had the luxury, of being able to step back and look at this, whereas daily reporters, they report today's explosion means that you forget about yesterday's explosion, so that you never have a sort of, you never have it all in front of you. And I think also, the thing that I wanted to accomplish, and I hope that I did accomplish, is to sort of, if you read this book, that I take you inside the West Wing. I was sitting on the couch there, and I hope readers will find themselves feeling that they are sitting on the couch there too when they read this book.
What one of the things that people have been wondering is how, you know, for all the hostility to the press in the White House, somehow they said yes to you, and it's kind of like, it's been mystifying to some people that I've talked to, say, you know, how did they just let him be there on the couch for all this time? You know, you had to pitch your project. You can address that, but actually one of the questions I also wanted to ask was, you know, you from what I've read, you had some, you know, favorable impressions of Trump based on years in New York. You kind of, didn't you know him a bit in New York?
No, I was at New York Magazine, and he used to call me up to, I was one of the people he would call to complain about what was said about him, or actually often to complain that nothing was said about him. But here too, I can't really answer this question. I asked to come into the White House. to see this, and they said yes, sort of. I mean, there was no grand moment in which they said, oh, God, what a good idea. Oh, let's do this. Let's set this up. Let's organize this. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It was like a shrug. Okay, you want to do it? Yeah, you're writing a book. I remember, and I said this to Trump. I said, yeah, you know, I want to do a book, and I can see this. His face fell. Book. Why would you want to? Why would you want to do that? And so I was sort of let in without anyone weighing the meaning or the consequences of this, you know. And I would tell people, I would say I'm doing this book, and everybody's face fell when you said that. And then they would say sort of, well, when is this book coming out? And I would say, well, sometime next year. And I think for these guys, sometimes next year, it was a lifetime away. I mean, there was no reason even to consider that or even worry about it. So far, I mean, the world would, they work for Donald Trump, the world would surely end before that. And then there was, I think, another aspect of this, that I was not a political reporter. You know, for years, what I've done primarily is I write about the media. And, you know, Donald Trump is much more interested in the media than he is in politics. And so I think that there was some kind of bond there. But I don't want to emphasize that too much, because mostly I just think they didn't pay attention. They really didn't notice. I think many other reporters could probably have done this. I was just the one who did.
Well, when you say, okay, so you weren't a political reporter, and you were not on like the daily reporting regimen that everybody down there, you know, has to do and has to maintain access ongoing, right? Not just one project. Do you have one of the things you said, I think this was on the radio this morning, bear with me, you said, you were talking about, in terms of getting this story, there are different ways to skin a cat. And the arrangements that you had on this book appear to be somewhat different from, say, what the daily reporters who were on the beat at the White House could have for arrangements. And they seem to be either, you know, either resentful or envious. I'm not sure which, or some combination thereof. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure I can speak to that. I don't know why, other than the obvious that I came in, and I'm sort of an outsider. I'm not part of any organization. I don't work for a news organization per se. And I came in and I suppose grabbed up this story, or at least this story at this moment in time. And many people who find themselves there every day and sitting in the briefing room. By the way, if you sit in the briefing room, you truly learn nothing. But they sit there anyway, and they're hard-working people. And I think this came around, and this book, for better or worse, has become something beyond a book and something like a political event in and of itself. And I think everybody was caught off guard. But you know, having said that, my broader feeling is that there's a lot of ways, there should be a lot of ways to cover this administration. This is the central event of our time, and one of the things that distinguishes it from a media point of view is that nobody really knows how to cover it. And that's why we find ourselves in the situation of people can say again and again, and demonstrate again and again that this guy is a liar, a fool, that he on a daily basis commits these grievous acts against the political institutions in this country, and somehow nobody in the media has quite been able to communicate the full force of that fact. Here he is. He's still the president. He's going to go on being the president. So what's happened here? I mean, if this is so glaringly obvious, how come reporters can't make this glaringly obvious? Or how come they can't connect in such a way that that there's a collective moment of saying he has no clothes? So I kind of approached this in a somewhat different way and said, I'll bring everybody inside this experience.
Yeah. Did you? Okay. So in terms of you said you had over 200. Was it 200 interviews or 200 sources? Just so I can be straight on that. 200
sources.
All right. So 200 sources. Was there anyone? I know the people you want to protect the sources you had in terms of a lot of their identities. Was there anyone that you could identify that you didn't get a chance to interview that you wish you had?
No, or I won't anyway, because that sort of begins to triangulate. I mean, we were talking before, and I said, there's a whole set of people who I made, I've made different kinds of deals, but one kind of deal was to say, with people saying, I will talk to you, but if anyone asks me if I talk to you, I will deny it, and I will expect, and our deal would be that you would not contradict me. And I accepted that. I accepted that because I wanted to know what they knew. And so all of these, the whole range of these kinds of deals went into crafting, went into the process of gathering the information that's in this book.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's fair to say from the direct quotes in the book that Steve Bannon was a major source on this book. You spent a lot of time with him, quoting him directly. The question I had, and this just mystified me.
A remarkable source.
A remarkable source. Someone you think is worth listening to. So here's one of the things, I don't know if this ever occurred to you while he's just saying the amazing things he was saying. Did you ever think, like, why is he talking like this? Because he knows what Trump's reaction is going to be, that Trump's going to go berserk, and this guy's career in the White House, or if beyond the White House, is going to be in jeopardy. Why did he want to perhaps, torch himself in that fashion?
There was an arc over which I spoke to many people, but including Steve. And Steve, in the beginning, when I started to speak to him, was completely a Trump is the man. Trump is the leader of this movement. This wouldn't have happened without Trump. Trump is the guy who's going to revolutionize politics in America. And then you could watch that sort of change and degrade over weeks, sometimes over days, and I saw. I mean, in many ways, I saw this guy suffer, and I saw him come to the understanding that Trump was not what he seemed to be, that Trump was not going to let Steve Bannon's vision come to pass, for better or worse, and that Trump was I think that Steve came to believe that Trump was an illusion that he had, in that the reality was Trump is an idiot, and I really think it came to that basic level. He was not somebody who was going to do anything but satisfy Donald Trump's immediate needs. And I think Steve found that increasingly painful. And I was there to hear him express that pain. And I think that he came to the conclusion that he was going to break with Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And I think I was part of that grand strategy, which for a couple of reasons has not played out as Steve thought it would.
Yeah. Timing is everything in life and journalism, isn't it? One thing about Bannon, and then move on to something else, but some of you might have learned today that Bannon has been subpoenaed by Robert Mueller, to potentially testify in front of the grand jury. And when you testify in front of a grand jury, you can't have your lawyer with you. So it's clear that Mueller really wants to talk to him big time. Based on any of the stuff that he said to you, that you quoted him heavily in the book about that, which was the first stuff to leak about the book, as a matter of fact, do you think there's anything, any grist for Mueller from having Bannon under oath?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think that this does not seem to mean that Steve Bannon is a target. It seems to mean that that Donald Trump is a target, and they are looking to Steve Bannon to help them get to the bottom of this. And so the question is, the question at least in my mind, will Steve Bannon set out to break Donald Trump? You know, I mean, Steve Bannon was as close as anyone to what was going on here. I mean, to me, on many occasions, he expressed how horrified he was by the Russian, the potential for collusion on their parts, the money laundering. I think Steve knows where the skeletons are, so it will be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, all right, so some days you saw Bannon. Let me circle back and let's just talk in terms of this access that you had and what they agreed to let you do. What was and I know every day is different, that's one of the fun things about journalism, but what was, typically speaking, what was your daily routine like? You were staying at the Hay Adams, right? All right, so you get up in the morning, you have breakfast, you wander over to the White House, you go through the gate. What was on a typical day? How did you go about your business for this book?
The operation of this was you would really be. I was very careful not to go in as a member of the press. I didn't want. They were over there. I wanted to be very clearly over here. I didn't want people to think of me as a reporter. I was perfectly happy that they knew I was writing a book, but that was a lot different than acting as a daily reporter. But I would call. So I would have an appointment in the morning. I mean, I was probably usually have several appointments during the day. But I would have whoever was the first appointment would put me into the system. So I would just come into the West Wing, and in the reception area of the West Wing there are two couches. And the West Wing is very small, and the reception area is really more like a hotel lobby. I mean, everybody passes through it, and to pass from one side of the West Wing to the other, you go through it. So everybody is constantly going through there. So here I was sitting on this couch, waiting for my appointment. And what happened in the White House is no one ever keeps their appointments. So it would not be unusual for an appointment at 10 o'clock not to happen until 3 o'clock. And that's a peculiar feeling that you have, because you feel completely humiliated. You know, you're sitting there, and everybody knows you're sitting there because nobody cares about you, and you don't know what to do. And you know, for a long time, I didn't even know where the bathroom was. I thought, can you ask for the bathroom? And then it turns out you can just ask them, go to the bathroom, and wander back into the, you know, and sort of look down at the Oval Office. But this sense of this being invisible became very useful. So you got over the humiliation of this, and you just sat there, and eventually, you know, you had all the appointments. You got to know everybody, which means that when you were there waiting for someone else, and then someone else would come by, and then they would say, "Well, who are you waiting for?" It was often Bannon, and Bannon would never. That was a profoundly disorganized person. So. And then they would say, "Oh, well, Steve is never going to see you have hours, so why don't you come back and have a chat with me?" And then you would go back into the office and sit on another couch, and somebody else would come by and you would have a chat. So you're just the sort of this floating chat guy. That was me. And, and again, I was not like a reporter. The reporter thing, and there's a lot of, I pick up a lot of blowback on this. Didn't you press them? Didn't you ask what they were doing? Didn't you? And the answer is I didn't. I mean, I really didn't say anything. I was just the guy listening. And certainly not challenging anybody, kind of nodding my head as though in agreement, perhaps. And over this period of time, they, poured their hearts out.
Did you run across anyone who said to you, I don't know what anybody else is telling you, but they're misleading you. Really, he's doing a terrific job. Did you run across anyone in the West Wing who said that to you, in effect?
Never once.
Well, I just want to get that on the record. Now, did that surprise you at all? I mean, we were just talking backstage before about how you wanted to, in your word, you went in, one of the ways you pitched them was, like what reporters do, you say you want to humanize your subject. And that involved talking to the people who work with them all every day. Humanize the subject, well, actually, you did humanize him in a way. So but were you surprised? Were you surprised by the critical mass of criticism?
I was completely surprised. And again, this is not fair because in the beginning there was a kind of Donald Trump rah rah, but that's with not just with Steve Bannon, but with virtually everyone. I saw the transformation occur there as they had to work with this guy on a daily basis, and just imagine what that was like. Almost everybody who I got to know among the senior staff in the West Wing are, I would say, good people, professional people, people who concerned about their own careers, concerned about the health of their party, and of the country itself. And so here they were, having to deal with this guy who absolutely knows nothing, cares about nothing, again, entirely focused on his own immediate gratification. And this was painful to Bannon, but it was painful in some way to everyone there. And that, as the months rolled on, I realized the story that I had. I think there have been rotten White Houses in the past. And you can hate them or love them, but there have been few White Houses, and maybe no White Houses ever, in which the entire senior staff believes that there is something wrong with the President of the United States.
So is it unfair to these people then, when there are some very good commentators who write continually, and I can think of a few, who write continually that they say, that people in the White House, if they had any conscience, they would not work for this person and that they would resign. Is it fair to say that, having been around these people and based on what you just said, that it's better that they stay to mitigate damage?
Well, I think I can get into their heads a little bit on the operation here. I think one of the interesting things about the people around Trump who went into the White House is that very few of them knew him very well. And that in itself is anomalous. Usually you go into the White House with a team of people, especially the ones who are closest to you, who you've been with over the length of a campaign. It comes sometimes 3 years, sometimes more. You're with these people every day. Everybody is deeply bonded, deeply committed to a particular idea. Most of the people who went into the Trump White House, Steve Bannon went to work for Trump in the middle of August before the election. He had really very little. It was functionally a surface relationship with this guy. Reince Priebus, hardly at all. And so they were sort of like everybody else when those, coming in, who was this guy? They went in thinking, and I think all of them, okay, this guy is odd, this is peculiar, eccentric, unexpected, out of the norm, but that doesn't mean that this can't be successful. It could, he's elected president. This is a big thing. It's a big thing in terms of how you regard someone who has been elected president. He did it. Very few people do this. It must mean something. And so they're in there believing that. And then as time goes on, as the days roll on, even actually from the first day, and nobody, this one incident really stayed with everyone, and that was the inaugural crowds. And Sean Spicer, who became the symbol of the most hapless creature on earth, which I think is unfair. And from that moment on, he would say, you can't make this shit up. And I think that was everyone, but everyone thinking, and remember, it's like, okay, we're here. We have to make the best of this for our own careers, for the country, and you're in this, in the middle of this thing. You can't. There's hardly a moment when you can breathe. No less think. You're reacting to everything. So it's very hard to suddenly say, I have to take a moral position here, mm-hmm. And at the same time. Let's remember, most of the people who went into this White House were out by the end of the summer or September, and they were out because, in part because they were pushed out, but they were pushed out, I would say, mostly because they didn't want to be there.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever get a chance to talk to the Mooch? You remember the summer of the Mooch?
I did. As I say, I don't want to single out who I've spoken to, but the Mooch.
Mooch speaks for himself. Well, since you, since Michael put the S word on the table, I have to use it in terms of a news event that just happened last week. In terms of the shithole affair. Now that's gone on. That has gone on for something like 5 days because they kept changing their spin. And even Sarah Huckabee Sanders said today, "I can't believe we wasted 5 days on this story." Well, hello, we know why. But Trump's tweeting about it all weekend. Now, my question on that is, as you watch that unfold, does it feel like a confirmation of basically what you're saying about the dysfunction of the White House? How does it speak to the theme of your book? Because it seems to me like it underscores just the stuff that's happened since the book came out.
Yeah, everything that has since. This book came out on.
It was a Friday.
Yes, I was at the the 6th, the 5th. It was supposed to come out on the 9th, and then we pushed it up because Donald Trump was suing us.
Right. Yeah.
But everything that has happened since this book started to, and since the news of it started to break, seems to confirm this book. I mean, he's suing me. What is on the man's mind? I mean, first thing, he's proposing a lawsuit that he's claiming invasion of privacy and defamation of a president of the United States. This is not going to happen. And instead, the effect is going to be to sell more books than have ever been sold in the history of Christendom. I don't know. And then, of course, you know, we go on to him having to defend his own mental health. Who does that?
That's right.
Then the endless tweets, the endless attacks on Bannon, but also on me personally. You know, okay, yes, let's sell some more books.
You know.
And then into this, and then that thing, you know, when he did let the reporters in on the immigration thing, which was all to show that he was sentient. You know, and what did it show? He was just willing to agree with everybody. So, and then into this immigration thing, where which seems to be not only appalling in every way for what he said, but then he says something and then he denies it. I didn't say that. And it's just, the man is just a liar.
Well, all right, so here's a serious question. Based on your being around the White House and what people say and your close observation, is he crazy, or is he crazy like a fox?
No, he's certainly not crazy like a fox. I mean, I
figured, like, in terms of, like, you know, playing to his base and keeping them ginned up.
I don't think so, and I think everybody around him feels that he is just appallingly stupid. And I think that there's a theory that I've heard. Again, the people around him that Mueller won't return indictments because it's going to be hard or impossible to prove intent, because it's just stupid people doing stupid things. And I think that would be certainly consistent with everything that I saw. I mean, the idea that they could have put together a grand strategy here, I don't know who would have done it.
Now, supposedly John Kelly, the chief of staff and military disciplinarian, has imposed at least some sense of order. And I know he came in toward the end of your time there, right?
Well, I mean,
has he?
Well, he hasn't imposed order on the president, so nothing else really matters. And I mean, curiously, and this is another curious thing, he comes. There's no one really left in the West Wing. I mean, this is something that hasn't gotten that much attention, but functionally, the president's two senior-most advisors are this woman, Hope Hicks. She's 28 or 29. She's a former junior fashion PR person. And this guy, Stephen Miller, who probably everybody saw his, head blow up on television last weekend.
Yeah.
These are people as ill-equipped to have the role of the senior-most advisors. I mean, it's unheard of. I mean, it's impossible to imagine how the executive branch of this country can function with this talent pool.
laughing. I'm going to go to questions from the audience here. And the best ones have been culled, so if you didn't make the cut, don't take it personally. Come back another time, too. I'll just read some of the ones I'm seeing right at the top here. I'll read them just as I see them. The news media seems disposed to disbelieve your account of the White House. David Brooks referred to the book as a marker of a lowbrow resistance to Trump. Why do you think that is?
You know, throughout my whole career, everyone, and especially my publishers, have said, you're too highbrow. So I don't know, maybe it's a virtue of Donald Trump. He kind of lowers us all a bit. I don't know. This is the news media is, as I say, they're, everybody is trying to figure out how to cover this story. Everybody is, I think, resentful when someone else does it. I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things you just come back to. Read the book. That's all I have to offer is the book. If the book speaks to you, then I've done what I set out to do. If it doesn't, then that's okay too.
That's what Fred Armisen said the other night when he played you. That was uncanny. Which gets rid of my "what did you think of being portrayed by Fred Armisen" question. Did you take that in stride and good spirits? I mean, Saturday Night Live we're talking about.
Extremely good spirits.
How many journalists get to be portrayed on Saturday Night Live? The question about the news media, I think, is important in the sense that, a lot of reporters have focused on the fact that there were some factual errors in the book, which you've talked about and acknowledged. The year that John Boehner quit the House, et cetera, et cetera. Is this something that fact checkers missed and can clean up for second edition?
I don't know. Listen, nobody likes to make mistakes. The mistakes I made were mixing up two people named Berman, putting two L's or one L in Hillary, and I think we got wrong when Boehner left the House. We'll. In the multitude of future editions, we will fix all such errors.
I think there was just a note of you got the book out first, whereas probably a lot of people are planning down the road, maybe when they gave up the beat. The Daily Beat, they could then, aggregate their notes and put something together, and you kind of swooped in from the outside. I mean, is it an advantage there? Is it then for an advantage to be able to have the option of burning one's bridges?
Yeah, no. On top of everything else, yes. Everybody else has to go in. I don't have to go back. I'm not going back.
I don't think you're going to be back anytime soon.
And it is. I think that there's enormous virtue, not to take anything away from the daily reporters who cover this. I think that they're all doing sometimes a very good job. But there's other ways. There are other ways you want to be able to see this too. And so I come in, and I'm not a political writer. I've written a lot about politics, but I'm not. That's not principally my discipline. My principal discipline is to go in and to be. I'm the writer. I'm the person who can see a scene and set a scene and get the relationships right and the emotional tenor. I mean, that's if I'm doing my job the way I hope I can do my job. That's what I am. So there's a difference between a writer looking at this and a political beat reporter looking at this. Mm-hmm. But and not that there shouldn't be a political beat. I mean, they're doing a key job there. But there are other ways that people are going to be looking at this now and in the future.
Do you ever, journalism being the imperfect craft that it is, aside from things like names and the number of L's in Hillary, are there any, this is a question from the card, in retrospect, are there any passages in the book, more substantive passages, that you wish you could change or tweak looking back at them? looking at them now?
Well, I mean, in a general sense, I guess we all writers wish we could go on writing and rewriting. But that's in the general. In the specific, I don't know. I'm pretty happy.
Later, how much time did you have with Trump himself? Because that seems to be one of the things that is in somewhat dispute. He makes it sound like he didn't have any contact with you at all.
I have spent about 3 hours in conversation, one-to-one conversation with Trump from the campaign, during the campaign transition, and in the White House. But the other thing that I and I go out of my way to make clear here is this book is not about my impressions of Donald Trump. It's a book about the impressions of Donald Trump on the part of the people who are closest to him.
Here's a question that, I don't know, maybe this person saw the Stephen Colbert appearance, I don't know. But Colbert got into this. Will you ever publish or release the interviews and recordings that you used to write the book?
You know, I mean, I've been doing this job for an awfully long time, and it's a funny thing that never has really come up as part of what we're supposed to be doing. You know, you assemble this material, tapes, notes, and then you do what I do, which is write paragraphs. So I never really occurred to me. So I don't know, and but I'm actually thinking about it now. I mean, I have a lot of recordings of people who I have absolutely sworn never to acknowledge that I have spoken to. So I suppose I cannot use those. But you know, I have these Bannon tapes, which are just kind of fabulous.
You know,
so maybe
you know, the Bannon tapes sounds right there. Sounds like a marketable commodity. You know, one of the things that happens and this is like sort of an ongoing nagging. It's been going on in journalism for decades. Is the use of anonymous sources, or the fact that when journalists don't name their sources. You know, there's been a lot of debate about this within journalism certainly since the 70s and 80s, 70s. You know, Watergate was broken with anonymous sources, and then the Washington Post had a scandal where someone made up a 6-year-old heroin addict who didn't exist, and it was an anonymous boy named Jimmy, and they had to give back a Pulitzer Prize. And so ever since then, in journalism, it's this thing where you really need to try to name your sources, or at least give some kind of explanation in the body of a story about why someone is requesting anonymity. Can a book like this be written when with everybody on the record, or
no?
You know,
obviously it can't. It can't be. And there's a certain form of these kinds of books about inside the White House, or inside other, and sometimes inside presidential campaigns. In order to do this kind of book, you have to make the kind of deals that are necessary to make. And so you're left with the thing, okay, do you want a book like this, or do you not want a book like this? Do you want this view, or do you want to say, no, I'm too pure for that view, I suppose is the... and I would certainly go, give me the view, let me see. And then you have to judge the book on its merits. You have to judge it by reading it. Do you believe it? It's like any book that you're going to approach. Does it, after you've had the experience of reading it, how do you feel about it? And we're all capable of making those kinds of fundamental decisions. This has added to my knowledge of what's going on, or I don't feel it's added to my knowledge.
I noticed in the acknowledgments, there were some journalists listed in the acknowledgments that you would thank for their help on the book. I think Mike Allen was in there, one of the, sort of premier Washington insider types. I was wondering if you, were you checking with them along the way? Like, here's what I'm hearing, does that ring true to you or not? Or did you perhaps, show sections of the manuscript to journalists who you respect?
Yeah, I mean, I know probably most of my friends are journalists. So yes, I mean, there's a constant kind of discussion of this. Does this sound right to you? Or of other journalists using me as a source.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think is likely to happen with the, the Republican Party is so hopelessly split right now, where you have people who are, pledge their fealty to him, who are, basically falling all over themselves to either ignore or excuse what he's doing. And then you have some Republicans, some prominent Republicans, I'm thinking, Mitt Romney lately, for example, just off the top of my head, whose basic attitude is, we've got to save this party, we need to get this party back. Now, I know you're not a political writer per se, but, based on being around the White House and being around what's going on with Republicans, perhaps being around Trump, is the Republican Party in any kind of danger of being wiped out in the midterms in 2018? Well, I mean, for example?
I mean, I think that's it doesn't take a genius, a political genius, to know that that's going to be that's the threshold question. What happens in 2018? And the likelihood is that the Republicans are going to have enormous difficulties in 2018. And so the question is, how enormous? And then we'll see. I mean, it's sort of heading in the direction it's heading.
Well, obviously the Russian investigation is one wild card, and I was curious, this is prompted in part by this, but I was just reminded, I wanted to ask you, in the time that you spent with all the people that you spoke with, did the Russian investigation come up much in conversation? As in, gee, I don't know, this background buzz, we're really worried about this, or not? I mean,
yeah, it came up in the following, the inside view of the Russian investigation sort of goes in the following ways. Nobody really believes that there was a grand conspiracy, largely for the reasons that I said before. This gang couldn't shoot straight. At the same time, everybody felt they were enormously vulnerable from a legal standpoint because, again, they were a gang that couldn't shoot straight. Bannon proposed a very disciplined response to this, modeled after the Clinton response in during the Monica Lewinsky chapter, and in this response, they would have segmented out. Here would be the legal team, and they would deal with everything necessary. All of everything that was going on with the case, and here would be the President of the United States acting presidential. Now, we can already see what's wrong with that picture. But in Bannon's view, this was something that you could get through an investigation like this if you were exceptionally disciplined. And again, there is the problem, as Bannon acknowledged. Donald Trump is the least disciplined man, possibly in the world, but certainly in the White House. The other point that everyone made is that if it got into money laundering, that would be an exception. I mean, no one seemed to question the premise that Donald Trump had been involved in all kinds of financial skullduggery. And if prosecutors looked at this, that would be a problem. So you know, I mean, I think that was basically where almost everybody came out on this thing, that nobody was saying that Donald Trump was, what would be the word, innocent, I suppose would be the word.
Do you think you will be called to testify by Mueller? Do you think that's going to spill over into anything that you may have had in conversations with anybody he might be interested in?
I don't know. I don't know why I would call to be testified. You could just read the book.
Believe it or not, we're almost at the end of our time. How fast time flies. By the way, I just wanted to mention that today, you just mentioned Monica Lewinsky. Today's the 20th anniversary of when the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke. So if we all remember where we were 20 years ago, I don't know. I do. But as you can tell, we've sort of, that was the innocent days, don't you think? I got to ask just one last question before we wrap up. And somebody alluded to this in part, but Bannon in the book says that, as you recall, Bannon in the book says that there's about a 33% chance that he could make it through the end of the first term. Do I have that quote right?
I could do it. 33% chance that he will be impeached, 33% chance that he will resign on the shadow of the 25th Amendment, a 33% chance that he would limp to the finish line, but a 0% chance that he would get a second term, or even that he would run again.
So, all right. So my question is, you know, what do we think is going to happen? Does that sound like a fair assessment to you at this point?
Sounds fair to me. Yeah.
So you think he could, you know, run for re-election, or he'd get primaried by another Republican?
I just don't think he'll do it. I don't see the motivation here. He's and he's going to be by the time. I mean, we're not to the end of year one yet, and he's been pummeled. I mean, he's just been, he cannot make this. I mean, he cannot. I mean, if he limps to the end, he will be a destroyed human being.
All right, well, I want to thank everyone for coming. All I can say is one comment that I read somewhere saying that this was about our guest tonight, said that it takes a wolf to catch a wolf. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.